I'm Dave with Echoes from the Past Paranormal Podcast. I have Mr. Yancey with me. Why don't you tell me more about yourself, your background real quick?
My name's Tim Yancey, and as a child of my family, I went through what most people would call a violent haunting. My brother and I, at first, we thought that there was a man that was living in the woods outside of our house, and over time, what happened was that man eventually moved into our house, and it became that it wasn't a man at all, it was an entity that we came to know as the Shadow Man. From that, it's been a lifetime of paranormal research, trying to understand what happened to us as a family, understanding the psychology of hauntings and how that comes about, what the ingredients are that can create a situation like that. And I've been really blessed to have a voice in the paranormal community as somebody who can counsel and work with families who are going through something like a haunting.
With your personal experiences and everything like this, you're most well known for the Amityville cases.
Probably, yeah.
And you got to work with Ed and Lorraine Warren. How was that? I mean, everybody hears misconstrued stories of Lorraine and Ed and how they're mainly focused on demons, stuff like that. But that's people hearing it from the outside and seeing how Hollywood has twisted everything.
Right. I think that what you have to understand is when Ed and Lorraine originally got into this, he had a fascination for the paranormal. And what would happen is he would find haunted locations, and most people don't know this, but Ed was an artist. He was a really pretty good skilled artist. And he would go to places that he knew were haunted locations, and he'd stand outside and set up a tripod. He'd put a canvas up and he'd start painting the house, a picture of the house. And of course the people are going to come out and go, hey, what are you doing? That was his in. That was the way that he got in. He said, hey, I just want to give you this as a gift, I'm an artist. And hey, I hear your house is haunted, and strike up a conversation. And that would be how he would get into some of these locations and things like that. But he was fascinated by the paranormal. Lorraine was a sensitive who, when she started going on some of these cases, began to get impressions and these things that would come to her. And so they became like this, if you think about the 50s and 60s and that, they were kind of like this live free, hippy-dippy, crazy guys that traveled the country and explored haunted houses. That's pretty cool. They were devout Catholics. And you have to understand that when it comes to violent hauntings and the scenarios, the fear-based scenarios that can happen, the bangings and the rappings and the growls and things like that, coming from a Catholic standpoint, it was something that they could only term demons, demonic. That's what their faith had taught them that it was. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't think in those terms when it comes to violent hauntings, but for their time and their knowledge base and their experience being Catholics in this field, that's what they call
it. Yeah, okay, because nowadays everyone thinks you hear demon, you automatically think the devil, you automatically think, and that goes also back to Hollywood blowing everything out of proportion.
Right.
I mean, especially the latest increment of the Amityville horror movie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, to me that's just completely. It's Hollywood. That's all it is.
It is.
I mean, you're not hearing the real story of what happened. Growing up, I read the book. I'll tell you, the book scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But that's also helped pique my interest into the paranormal.
Right.
Now, working with everybody involved with that, how are you taking Hollywood blowing everything out of proportion?
Well, you have to take it for what it is. Hollywood isn't necessarily interested in creating an accurate portrayal or a true story. They're interested in selling and putting butts in movie theater seats, and selling tickets and making a profit. So you have to really look at what you're getting there. You have an incident that occurred. There is somebody who writes a story or a book based on that. So there's one leap into somebody else's interpretation of a story. Now you have a screenwriter who comes along who's interested in that, and he's going to write his version of it. So there's a second jump. Then it gets to a director who decides, well, we're going to put this in it. They need the jump scares. They need the creepy scenes, those types of things. Well, rather than maybe just a door slamming, we're going to have the door bust off the hinges and fly into the yard. So there's a lot of creative license that happens in Hollywood. It's the same thing that happens in television as well. You know, you have these reality series, Mountain Monsters, some of these shows now that are out there, and they're totally scripted. I can tell you this, if you think there's a reality TV show on television that doesn't have a director calling the shots, then you've lost sight of what television is. Because nobody's going to create a television show that they're going to put on the air unless they know every detail of what's going to happen on that film. They're not going to let you just get out there and go willy-nilly and whatever happens, happens. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to every one of those episodes. Well thought out ahead of time.
And with the new shows out, and with the shows coming out, I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I love some of the new shows. You know,
Sure.
Ghost Adventures is a great comedy in my opinion.
Sure.
And stuff. What are your feelings on how it's actually impacting the paranormal community?
I think that it all has its place. It generates curiosity about the paranormal and that. But the problem that I have with it is, say I go to work and one of my employees or one of my coworkers sees me on an episode of a haunting. Hey man, you believe in that ghost stuff? I thought that was crazy, because they have this image baked in their head of a bunch of hillbillies running around in the woods looking for monsters, that kind of thing. And they don't understand that what I do as a counselor who goes into homes and works with people is these are people who are really frightened of something that's happening in their house, and they don't understand it. And sometimes it's a ghost, but sometimes also it's a bad parent who's coming in the room at night. Or maybe it's easier to say that there's a ghost in your room than to admit that you've been cutting yourselves, or that there's an alcohol or a substance abuse problem. I'm hearing voices in my head. Maybe it's not the alcohol that I've been drinking for 20 years, maybe it's a ghost. And people can blur those lines of reality and go there with those. So there's some real serious and practical work that's going on in the areas of psychology and clinical, life coaching. But they see this idea of what ghost hunting is supposed to be on television, and they think that's what you're doing.
Exactly. That's one of the things that really hurts, because a lot of groups now out there there are still groups out there that are out there trying to help people, and I'm glad you brought that up, because last night at the round table, one of the main questions that was brought up, what's your most reliable piece of equipment? I loved your answer. Cup of coffee and just listening.
Sure.
Now, that right there, you're taking a different point of view from the technical standpoint with the paranormal investigations. How is yours? Yours is a lot different now, but you also still do work with the technical portion, correct?
Yes, to an extent. Well, here's the thing. I work with a team of people who are very interested in the technical side of this and presenting evidence. And that's all a part of weighing in on what's happening in that house. If they bring me a picture of a shadow that's walking across a room, or somebody who's being scratched, that's a pretty important piece of evidence. It helps you to make a determination of what's going on in that house. But you understand, I've been doing it. It's sad for me to say, and a lot of people laugh at it, but I've been a paranormal investigator since I was 6 years old. And I say that by meaning I had no choice. There was stuff happening in my house, and I was doing whatever I could do as a kid to try to understand what was happening. So 40-some years later, I've gotten to a place now where I'm not concerned about the evidence. I'm not concerned with trying to capture the perfect photograph. There are people that do that, and that's fine. For me, you have to understand that I've gotten a kind of a real good idea of how this stuff works, and also some of the tools that we need to use to alleviate some of this. And here's the deal. You may think there's a ghost in your home, and maybe there is, and maybe there isn't. But the recipe for how to fix that is the same regardless. We all have tools of empowerment that will help us come back to a place of balance and center in our lives. And those are very basic tools that we can all use. And sometimes life gets a little wonky and we get caught in the swirl and the spin of things, and we fall outside of that and we lose sight of that. By using some basic tools of faith, humor, love, laughter, connecting with family, because that's the goal of this stuff. In violent hauntings, you constantly see families who are in turmoil, who hate each other. They all live in the same house, and they don't even sit in the same room together. There's an isolation and a breakdown of family that occurs. There's a loss of faith that happens with people. all kinds of little breakdowns, anything that's a positive energy inside of that home kind of gets whittled away and disappears. So you have to take the steps to reintroduce some of that back to them. Hey, how you feeling? What's going on? Let's not talk about the haunting. Let's talk about you as a person. What's happening in your life? You know, are you going to church? Are you going out to movies? Are you having a good time? Or is it just always sitting in the dark? You know, kind of thing. Well, for people who want to get back to a healthy lifestyle, who may not be experiencing a haunting, the recipe is the same. For people who are being and experiencing negative energy in their home and need to displace negative energy, it's the same recipe. It's the same tools. Then I guarantee you, when you apply that and you come back to a place of center in your life to where you say, this stops here and this stops now. There's no room in my home for negative entities, negative influence. This is my home and I declare this my residence. It's all those powers, those tools of faith and love and laughter and humor that do that. And it's the same.
Now, I truly appreciate.
Is that too long?
No, honestly, I appreciate you sitting down with me. If you could give advice to anybody who's looking to start off in the paranormal field itself, what piece of advice would you give them to keep in the back of their mind?
When you first start this out, I think that you have to take a look in the mirror and find out what are the reasons behind why I'm doing this. There are some people who get into this, and you see people from all avenues. They want to help others. They want to capture the perfect photograph. They want to explore and find out what happens to us when we die. All kinds of reasons for getting into this. So find that thing that interests you the most and work towards that goal. And if it's helping people, well, then you need to start looking at some clinical work and some counseling type of avenues to work into. Because I tell you right now, 99% of the time, there's not a ghost in the house. There's a dysfunction, there's chemical abuse, there's substance abuse that's happening, there's dementia that's happening in a home, there's cutting, there's bad parents, there's substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and domestic abuse. And those are the demons that are haunting those people at that time. And sometimes we transform that into, rather than admitting, it's, you know, the episode that I did was called The Shadow Man. Shadows are reflections of who we really are. And if you look at that episode and understand I had a bad parent who was coming in my room at night, you'll understand what that demon was. And sometimes it's a ghost, and sometimes it's not. You know, so there's a whole section of clinical, psychological stuff that's happening over here. Now, if you're a tech guy and you're interested in the gadgetry of all of this, that's awesome too. And there's a whole field of that stuff. So you need to start looking at electronics and things like that. It's where you want to go, but where it starts is make the decision of first turning into your own psyche and saying, why am I in this? What is it that interests me about this? And keeping a healthy balance in your life of not becoming obsessed with it, because it can really be addictive, you know. And you're somebody, I used to know people who live, sleep, eat, and breathe the paranormal, and meanwhile their wife and their family are sitting over there like, you know, what's going on? And they miss the whole experience, you know, because they're wrapped up in this dark, creepy little thing over here. So,
So if people wanted to follow your work, where could they go?
oh my goodness, I'm on Facebook, Tim Yancey, Y-A-N-C-E-Y. I have a new show that's going to be coming out called Strange TV, and that's at www.strangetv.net. And there's a timyancey.com out there somewhere. So, yeah.
I like that answer.
Well, everything's kind of in flux right now because I'm going from a place of some television shows and some stuff like that to a different thing that I want to do. You know, not so much the jump scares and the scary, oh, there's a ghost in my house stuff, but to really getting into kind of the healing and the attaining resolution side of this. So there's a shift that's happening, so it's a little wonky to try to find my stuff out there.
Yeah, I am glad that you brought up the whole helping people, because in my opinion, a lot of the TV shows out there have
Yeah.
gone away from helping people, and
Sure,
they're
because that's
focusing
the
more on
tough part of the
commercial.
work. That's the big boy part of the work. And what happens with television is, when I first started this, you didn't have people who were using EMF meters. Nobody used EMF meters until the camera needed a visual type of tool that could show that ghosts exist. There was no way to prove that a ghost existed because, and then if I can take a tool and it's got blinky lights all over it that plays well for television, now I can show you something. Is there a ghost in here? Oh, it blinked. There's 3 ghosts in here. That kind of thing. So, I don't know.
I appreciate it, and I thank you
Hey,
very
man.
much.
Thank
And,
you.
follow him on Facebook.
Follow this guy because he's doing good stuff. The way that we get information out and the way that we exchange stuff and evolve this as a community is people like you doing stuff like this. So thank you.
But without people like you, we wouldn't have this community.
Damn good thing we're both good looking, huh?
Thanks.